Hey Cactus friends, it's Jenny from Cookies Cacti. We are at the 8-week update of this cactus seed soil battle. And for those of you who watched the first episode, thank you very much I got a lot of feedback, and I actually highly recommend that for those of you watching to go back to that video and read the comments. There was a lot of good comments in that section, and I'm going to highlight some of them for you. Just as a recap, if you remember, we are comparing 6 different types of soil mixes for growing Astrophytum and Ariocarpus from seed. So the 6 soils, which I have here, which I'll list them now. We have first the Uni-Gro cactus mix, or cactus soil. Soil number 2 is the Rob Romero mix. Soil number 3 is the Uni-Gro Seed Starter with Uni-Gro Perlite. Soil number 4 is the Uni-Gro, Cactus, Palm, and Citrus mix. Soil number 5 is the Seed Starter from East Coast Camanchaca. Soil number 6 is the Lofo Pro Seed Starting Soil from Mike's Rare Plants. And if you remember from that video, the prices of these soils range quite widely from things that are extremely inexpensive. I think the Rob Romero mix is probably the least expensive out of all 6. But then we have a group of all these big box soils or nursery soils that are kind of within that same range. Something like 10 to 16 or 18 cents per pot, 2.5-inch pot. And then we've got these 2 premium soils that I purchased off of Etsy, which get to be much more expensive. So like over $3 per pot, over $4 per pot. I think the East Coast Camanchaca soil comes out to be the most expensive out of all 6. And the purpose of this experiment was just to see, how do these different seed soils compare to each other? How does the pricing work? Is it worth it buying the premium soils? I'll leave that up to you to decide. That first video was very long, and I had a lot of discussion in there about what we would consider, a good return on investment for soils that are more expensive. And there really isn't a good answer to that. It just depends on what you're growing, depends on what your goals are. So I'm going to start this video off just by showing you what these seedlings look like at 8 weeks old. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at the data again. Because there have been more seedlings that have come up since the 4-week update from the first video. And then the other thing is that I have some additional comments to make, which is that originally when I decided to make this soil comparison video, I thought that I would be getting some answers, but instead I feel like this experiment has just created even more questions. So I think this is just like this really deep rabbit hole that you can really dig very, very, very deep into. And I even have some thoughts on potentially adding more mixes to this experiment with perhaps like another tray of seedlings that I would start sometime soon. For example, we saw that the Uni-Gro Cactus, Palm and Citrus mix, which is what I'm pointing to right now, it really underperformed compared to everybody. It is like the last place on both the Astrophytum and the Ariocarpus. But the thing is that I used the soil straight out of the bag, and we could see from the first video how organic, how compact that, and how dense that soil mix was. So, if I add pumice to it, would it do better? And that's a question mark. How does my adult cactus soil compare? Because I used my adult soil mix, which is 75% pumice with 25% Uni-Gro at this time, and it seems to be doing well, but this mix was not part of the experiment. I've got some pots here on the edge of the tray which are not part of this experiment, and they seem to be doing all right, but without a proper comparison we really don't know how it performs compared to everybody else. Another comment that I want to make is in my setup of this experiment, you'll see that this 1020 tray, sorry this is really hard to see, there's 4 pots going this way, and there's 8 pots going this way. So the center 6, what would you say, rows, are the experiment. And then we've got the edge pots over here on this side, which are not part of the experiment, because I want to make like the center pots as consistent in terms of environment as possible, because you can imagine if I included the edges as part of the experiment, that's not fair, because the edges, for example, I find to be much more moist compared to the pots that are in the center of the tray. You see a lot of that green algae developing on the edges, like on the pots on the edges, whereas compared to the center, it's a lot less green. It's very clear. And you can see here, there's definitely mold developing, and that's actually a pot of Cactus hexadrophorus, which is not part of this experiment, which is what I call the dummy pot. Some of the seedlings have died under that mold. Why don't I just go maybe from left to right? And what we're going to do is kind of look at the condition of these seedlings and what they look like right now. And then we'll go over actual numbers in a little bit, so you can see the number of seedlings that have come up in total throughout this entire experiment for every one of these soils, because more seedlings have come up since last time. So let's take a look at the Astrophytum for Uni-Gro. They're actually looking pretty good. Definitely cactus bodies are there, aerials are there. There's another pot here. And let me see if I can get this. There's one more pot here of Astrophytum. Let's do Astrophytum and then we'll come back around for the Ariocarpus. So it's really hard to have a good flow for comparison. Okay, next we have the Rob Romero mix. So this Rob Romero mix, which is the pumice plus the mushroom compost plus the native soil, I found out that the native soil, you're not supposed to use it if your native soil is clay, and my native soil is clay. So in reality, first there was a commenter who made that comment, and he or she was completely correct. I forgot who the commenter was. They had notified me that, hey, you're not supposed to use clay as your native soil, and then Rob Romero himself confirmed it. Let me put up a couple of screenshots of comments, because Rob Romero himself also made some comments on that video, which is really interesting. Some things that I skipped, like I didn't sift the mushroom compost, I didn't sift the pumice. I just used it straight out of the bag and then kind of hand picked out the biggest pieces that I didn't want. And then I think he had some additional comments on perhaps additional amendments that he puts in here. So, you know, just keep that in mind. This soil probably would perform even better if I had not used my native soil, which was clay. But you can see the Astrophytum there. There's another pod of Astrophytum from Rob Romero's mix. And then the last pot is over here. Oh, I can't even see my viewfinder. You'll just have to look at it yourself. Let me see if I can, let me make it so that the Uni-Gro and the Rob Romero mix are both in frame so you can see them together. Sorry, this is so hard to, here, let me use this pot then. You can kind of see them together. I say the seedlings came up pretty well in terms of number for the Rob Romero mix. But if we look at the status of the seedlings, I would say that the seedlings in the Uni-Gro soil seem to be slightly more developed than the seedlings from the Rob Romero mix. But again, you know, we're comparing Uni-Gro versus my native soil, so I don't think that's... Anyway, I'd have to do another experiment to use Rob Romero's mix, but not my native soil. Like use some sort of potting soil instead. Otherwise, Rob's mix is doing quite well. Next, we have the Miracle-Gro Seed Starter with the Miracle-Gro Perlite. Let me zoom in on the Astrophytum again. Let me try this. It's not bad. See, the Astrophytum seem to be developing. Again, I'm trying to record through my plastic dome, so it's probably a little distorted. Try my best. And then last pot is this one for Uni-Gro Seed Starter. Let me see if I can kind of comment about the overall state of the seedlings. They're actually decently developed, kind of similar to the Rob Romero mix. I'd say, yeah. Maybe not too far behind the Uni-Gro mix as well. Okay, next we've got the poorest performing soil mix, which is the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm mix. This was not amended with any inorganics, so it was just that super, super dense organic soil, and these cactus seedlings don't seem to like it at all. So that's a pot of Astrophytum, and you can clearly see that, well, it's actually kind of hard to see the seedlings, but they're not looking that great. They're alive, but they're like underdeveloped. The color doesn't look great. There's one green one up to the top of the screen. See another pot here. You can barely even see any of the seedlings in there. They don't look good. That's all I can say. And there's one more pot over here, Astrophytum. Remember, there's 25 seeds sowed per pot of pretty much everything. So there's 3 pots of Astrophytum per cactus soil, so 75 seeds total. In terms of both germination and seedling development, that Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm mix is terrible on its own. Don't use it like that. Which makes me want to try amending it with inorganics to see if it can do better. Next we have the 2 premium soils. So these pots with the different color top dressing is the East Coast Camanchaca seed starting soil, and you can see East Coast Camanchaca soil was #1 in terms of germination, and you can see that the seedlings are also developing very, very nicely. I would say they probably are the most developed out of all 6 soils. And his seeds came up the fastest, and so they have a head start on everybody else in terms of how much time they've spent, basically being alive and existing. So you can see how good the Astrophytum look. There's another pot. And then the last pot would be over here, looking really, really good. Seedlings look very happy and healthy. I would say East Coast Camanchaca and the Uni-Gro are closer in terms of seedling development. I would say Uni-Gro is not too terribly behind the East Coast Camanchaca soil, so it's not bad. I wish I could do side by side, but I can't. But East Coast Camanchaca, definitely the seedlings are more developed than Uni-Gro, but Uni-Gro's not bad. Last, we have the last premium soil, which is the Mike's Rare Plant Lofopro seed soil. And let me zoom in on the Astrophytum. Looking pretty good. Pretty nicely developed. Maybe not. I can actually put these 2 next to each other. East Coast Camanchaca on the left, Mike's Rare Plants on the right. Let's look at this one. If I zoom out, you can see them side by side. Seedlings are definitely more developed on the East Coast Camanchaca soil. And then let's look at the last pot. Astrophytum and Mike's Rare Plants. And then we can see it side by side with the East Coast Camanchaca. And then we've got some dummy pots over here, which I made the comment earlier that you can see a lot of green algae developing on the pots on the edge, which kind of makes sense because there's all that condensation. So it's like extra wet on the edges. Next, let's look at the Ariocarpus development. So also 25 Ariocarpus seeds per pot. So over here we've got Uni-Gro, and we'll go over the numbers later. Tubercles are developing. Looking pretty good. Actually, there's a lot of seedlings in there out of 25 seeds. Next, we've got the Rob Romero mix. The Ariocarpus. Also some tubercles there. Not bad at all. Then we've got the Uni-Gro Seed Starter with Uni-Gro Perlite. Also some tubercles coming out. I don't know if you can see this at all. I hope you can. Looking okay. And then we've got the Uni-Gro Cactus Seed, or Cactus, what is it? Citrus Palm Mix. Doing really bad. Really bad. I don't even know if you could see. There is a seedling right in the center of the pot. It's not looking too happy. And I think there's only one other seedling. There used to be 3, and now there's only 2 that I can see. Then we've got the East Coast Camanchaca soil, which was doing very well with the Ariocarpus. And you can see the seedlings are looking very good. Tubercle development is very obvious. It's probably the furthest developed Ariocarpus seedlings for sure amongst the 6 soils. Although I would say Uni-Gro probably is the closest in terms of development, but it's really clear that this East Coast Camanchaca soil is still outperforming in terms of like a seedling development because the seeds came up so fast. And then last we've got the Mike's Rare Plant Lofo Pro Seed Starter with the Ariocarpus in there. They don't look quite as developed as the East Coast Camanchaca soil for sure. Here I can put them kind of side by side and you can see it's very obvious when you look at it like this. So that's where we're at 8 weeks of this cactus seed soil battle. So I'm going to consider maybe starting another tray with some more soil mixes. I pretty much want to use what I already have, but kind of like cut it with organics, or sorry, cut it with inorganics and stuff like that. These pots on the very right are not doing great. There used to be Ariocarpus in those 2 pots and I can't see any plants in there. So I'm going to go head over to my computer now and let's go take a look at some numbers and then maybe some closing thoughts. By the way, oh, sorry, it's really dark. But because the East Coast Camanchaca soil was doing so well, I was actually discussing with one of my Instagram friends and actually also a viewer on YouTube about trying to look at what that soil consists of. And we were looking at the top dressing and trying to guess what was in it. We're guessing, I think, pumice, lava rock, akadama, and perhaps turfus. But I was at my local nursery, which was the Summer Winds Nursery, and they have like this Japanese pumice and this bonsai soil blend, which has lava rock, akadama, pumice in it. And then I also got the bag of akadama, but I was looking at the prices and talking to her about it, and I don't think this is the best price you can get for stuff like this, but I did buy some, and I kind of want to try this too. I'll show you, like, this Japanese pumice is not white colored. Kind of interesting. It even says on the bag. It says Japanese pumice is a tan color. And then there's this one. Let me get some light. See this bonsai mix? Sorry, I wasn't actually planning on showing this. But this has pumice, akadama, and lava rock in it. And then this is akadama itself. I've never used akadama at all. I am not familiar with it at all, but this whole experiment makes me want to try it. I think these are like, yeah, these were I think $15 each per bag, and it's 2 1/4 quarts. Yeah, all 3 of them are 2 1/4 quarts, so probably kind of expensive. But anyway, I might try this too in my second experiment that I'm interested in doing. I don't know. I really don't know this stuff. I'm at my computer now, and I'm just going to point my camera to the computer screen so I can actually know what in the world I'm talking about. And then I'll put up screenshots of these tables so it's a lot easier to see. In terms of the Astrophytum, I have both a table and a graphical chart to show you. In terms of the table, you can see the actual numbers. So you can see for East Coast Camanchaca, we're still at, let's say, the last row is day 56, which is 8 weeks. And you can see East Coast Common Chaka staying steady at 74 Astrophytum seedlings. Mike's replant, we actually got one more seed to germinate since our 4-week update, so we're at 58 seedlings now. Uni-Gro, we got a couple extra germinations since last time, so at 59. Romero's mix is interesting. We actually got 5 more seeds to germinate since 4 weeks ago, so we're at 63 on Romero's mix. And then the Uni-Gro Seed Starter with Uni-Gro Perlite, we're at 42 seedlings now. So we actually got an additional 5 seeds to germinate since last time. And then the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, we're at 29 seedlings now for Astrophytum. So we actually got 4 more to germinate. So there's still seeds coming up, or seedlings coming up, beyond the 4-week mark. So that's kind of interesting too. Let me show you the graphical chart of these numbers, so it's even easier to see. So in the chart you can see blue is East Coast Common Chaka, still hanging steady at number 1. But Rob Romero's mix has become, has even closed a little bit of that gap between Rob Romero's mix and East Coast Common Chaka. And then we've got Uni-Gro in 3rd place, Mike's Rare Plants in 4th place, the Uni-Gro Seed Starter in 5th place, and then the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix in last place. But you know, like all 6 of these soils, they are definitely varying in how they're doing in terms of how the seedlings look. I personally will never use the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix like this to grow seeds. No, I won't do that. But you know, these top 4, so I'll say these 3 are kind of grouped together. Romero's mix, Uni-Gro, and Mike's Rare Plants. But the Romero mix is doing quite well, and I'm wondering if it would do even better if I had not used my native soil. So here's where we're at 8 weeks. Now let's take a look at the Ariocarpus, and just remember there were 25 total seeds. So let's look at the chart first. You can see that we got some more germination that occurred between the 4-week update and now at 8 weeks. So for East Coast Common Chaka, we're now at 20 seedlings. So we got 2 extra from last time. Mike's Rare Plants, we're at 15 seedlings. Again, two more seeds germinated since last time. Uni-Gro, we're at 23 seedlings. We got an increase of 8 seedlings that germinated since last time. And so now Uni-Gro is actually in 1st place as far as, you know, the number of seedlings that have come up. Rob Romero's mix, we got 4 extra seeds to germinate, so we're at 20 at 8 weeks. Uni-Gro Seed Starter with Perlite, it's staying steady at 15 seedlings. And then the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, we actually lost a seedling, or I can't see it anymore. So we're only at 2. So this is really bad. And then now let's take a look at the graphical chart. So we can see that the yellow chart, or the yellow line, is the Uni-Gro cactus mix, and it is now in 1st place as far as a number of seedlings, or number of seeds that have germinated. East Coast Common Chaka and Romero's mix are tied, and then we've got the Uni-Gro Seed Starter and Mike's Rare Plants, which are also tied, and then the last place Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, which is doing very bad. I have a feeling that these 2 Ariocarpus, they may not survive as we keep going, but we'll track it anyway. So, you know, this Uni-Gro is doing pretty well, and I would say Uni-Gro in both Astrophytum and Ariocarpus are doing well, and same thing with Rob Romero's mix, kind of doing well in both, and of course East Coast Common Chaka is doing well in both, but again, there's that huge price difference. So at least for myself, from these 6 seed soils, for growing Ariocarpus, I'll probably just go with Uni-Gro. I'm probably going to step away from the Uni-Gro mixes. It's easy to access, it's relatively inexpensive, and then I'm going to try the Rob Romero mix with Uni-Gro and see if it does even better, because then we can do like a combination of these 2, and if it does even better, then score. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to throw the comments on the page as well. There's a comment from Morningstar8187 that talks about his soil mix, which is to me, this is also giving me the vibe of that East Coast Kamanchaka type of soil. And he's leaving this comment also to give an option of something that can be really inexpensive. So I think this is really interesting as well. And then there was another very technical comment left by this individual, Seema. This individual is extremely experienced in growing cactus and probably succulents from seeds. So there's a very technical discussion here. I recommend that you take a look at that. Some of it is a little bit over my head, but I think it's really interesting to have this. And you'll see that there's a couple replies down here. So he continues going on because I'm asking him, what is it that we're looking for in terms of water absorption and water holding capacity? And he answers that question. So, and it's very technical. So recommend that you take a look at that as well. And then another comment that was left was from Claire from Cactus Cove. There was an open question from the first video about whether the top dressing makes a difference or not. And there was another individual who made a similar comment, was that perhaps the East Coast Kamanchaka top dressing, because it has other colors in it. You know, pumice is like a really light, almost white color, whereas the East Coast Kamanchaka top dressing has darker colors in it, and whether that has an effect in terms of temperature. And so I think that's really interesting. And then Claire goes into some more details about her guesses on why the East Coast Kamanchaka, basically, why his soil is doing better in terms of the top dressing. And I think that, yeah, there's some really interesting discussions going on in the comments. So I highly recommend that you take a look at these. And some of these folks have been growing cactus for way longer than I have. And with the comment about potential temperature differences caused by the top dressing color, I do have an infrared thermometer that I tried, pointing at these, at the surface of the pots, and I couldn't really tell an obvious temperature difference between the East Coast Kamanchaka top dressing and then just the regular plain pumice dressing. But I was having a really hard time. Like, I would move that infrared thermometer around and the numbers would just be kind of bouncing around. It's really hard for me to tell. The only thing I could tell is that, I've got my light up here like this. So I believe these center pots that are straight, like directly underneath the lights, their top soil is actually warmer than the ones that are off to the edges. It doesn't vary a great amount amongst the 6 pots right in the center of the tray, but the edges, these edge pots, are clearly lower temperature than the ones in the middle. That's the only more definitive thing I can say with regards to temperature. I couldn't definitively say whether the darker top dressing actually has a significant impact on temperature or not. So it's still a mystery. But some other folks also left comments that they found something similar about the top dressing, that there's something about it, even maybe it's just the minerals that it provides, I don't know. But, top dressing is also an interesting conversation. But the only thing I can say is that by doing this experiment, I am questioning the way that I have been doing everything. That's like the one thing I can say for certain. All I can say is that it's a really deep rabbit hole when it comes to what's the perfect soil composition for growing cactus. And I really don't think there's just a single answer, to be honest. And it depends on where you are, your environment, your conditions. I might find something that works great for me, but it may not work great for you, Yeah. But isn't that what's fun? If we found the answer today, then what left do we have to do, I hope you enjoyed this update. I will be back at the 12-week update, and we'll continue watching these seedlings grow up. And you can see there's actually some fungus in there. There's mold showing up. There's actually some strange mold in the Uni-Gro mix. I don't know if you can see. There's this white stuff in there. And so we'll check that as well. How do these things go over time? So I will talk to you all soon. At least as far as this series goes, I'll be back in 4 weeks to do another update. Let's go say hi to Cookie before we sign off. Cookie is working really hard in my office, or in our office. Hi, Cookie. Say hi to your friends. Come to say hi. You're a very good girl. Until next time, take care, y'all. Bye-bye.